Picture it. America, 1996. The PlayStation is still new, and video games are making the leap from 2D to 3D. Before Acclaim and the WWF went 3D with WWF Warzone, before THQ and Aki brought WCW into 3D with WCW vs. The World, an unassuming little game called Power Move Pro Wrestling quietly beat everyone to the punch. Its developer was a young upstart called Yuke, years before they would become legendary for making the WWF SmackDown series. What Yuke made here isn't super deep or sophisticated, but it sets a solid standard for PS1 wrestling games. Don't let its obscurity or unassuming generic wrestlers fool you. In 1996, this game was quite innovative, and its gameplay and feel would lay the foundation for the SmackDown games and for PS1 wrestling games in general. Power Move Pro Wrestling isn't a masterpiece, but it's too important to just treat it like a footnote. So without further ado, let's take a look. There will be spoilers. Throughout the 1990s, 2D wrestling games were widespread and the genre was successful. But with the PlayStation, 3D was becoming the new standard. Some developers made the leap to 3D successfully. Some didn't. Over in Japan, Yuke released a game called New Japan Pro Wrestling Toukan Retsuden in 1995. This was the first wrestling game ever released on the PlayStation. In other words, Toukan Retsuden was kind of a big deal. Later, the New Japan license was removed from the game, and it was localized as Power Move Pro Wrestling for the US and PAL markets in late 1996. Unlike the Japanese release, Power Move wasn't the first or only wrestling game on the market at the time. A Midway arcade game called WWF WrestleMania the Arcade Game was ported to the PlayStation right around this same time. It wasn't really a wrestling game, more like a Midway arcade adaptation of WWF a la NBA Jam, where everything is exaggerated and over the top, but it fit the cartoonish vibe of the WWF at the time. Between the WWF branding and the fact that their rival WCW didn't even have a game at the time, WrestleMania did well on PS1, while Power Move Pro Wrestling never got much attention. So, let's give it the attention it never got in 1996 and see what it brought to the table. Power Move Pro Wrestling is a fairly basic experience, although a decent and satisfying one for the time. It features 12 wrestlers, actually reskinned and renamed versions of New Japan stars. There's a mix of cruiserweight wrestling, power wrestlers, and technicians here, offering up some variety. The gameplay itself will look and feel very familiar to anyone who's played the SmackDown games, down to some of these animations being recycled in that series. You beat the opponent up until you can eventually pin the opponent or make them tap out using strikes, grapples, submission holds, or even some diving moves. The controls are really simple and accessible, just using the D-pad and face buttons, so anyone could pick up and play this game in just a couple of minutes. Wrestlers have only a small handful of moves, and a lot of the moves are shared. The different moves that are here feel very satisfying to use, whether it's a German suplex or a fisherman buster. It's not exactly the same as the SmackDown series, though. Wrestlers don't really have finishers in the sense that most wrestling games have. You don't fill a meter up, you just need to get the opponent groggy and then you can hit them with a signature move. You can do that by picking them up off the mat or ramming them into the turnbuckles. It's surprisingly consistent and easy to set the opponent up for finishers like this, even though this is such an early 3D wrestling game. The wrestling isn't very deep or sophisticated, but it's fun, super accessible, and will keep you entertained and coming back for a little while. It's perfect for getting your wrestling fix in bite-sized chunks. As for the game modes, you can only play or sim one-on-one matches, but there's a few options. There's 4 difficulties to choose from. There's also 4 different arenas and 4 rings to wrestle in, giving some visual variety as well. You can play a 12-man gauntlet where you wrestle the entire roster in a back-to-back series of matches, wrestle for the Power Move Championship, or do either a round-robin tournament where everyone wrestles everyone else, or do a single elimination tournament. A nice quality of life feature here is that you can always quit from these series and save your game to come back later. No need to marathon anything. Between the accessible and enjoyable gameplay, the variety of arenas and rings, the solid pacing of the experience, and the tournament options, this game is simple but solid. There's a couple of other things I want to mention before we wrap it up. First, there's a feature where you can save your matches to your memory card and re-watch them whenever you want. I guess it's like the capture card of the 3 kids whose parents bought this back in 1996. I don't know. It's neat though. The other cool thing about this game is its localization. In 1995, Yuke developed New Japan Pro Wrestling 2 Retsuden for Japanese audiences. When they brought the game over to the West, they removed the New Japan branding. Funny enough, the disc says that the game is based on 2 Retsuden, and the title screen still says copyright in JPW. This game is still clearly in the ProRes mold. Before every match, a ring announcer introduces the match, the wrestlers, and then finally the referee. This is straight up the Japanese style of ring introductions, and it's uncanny hearing Tom Kane as a ring announcer doing that in English. The whole ritual of it helps ProRes have that legitimacy and big fight feel in real life, so it's a nice touch that they decided to localize the intros from the Japanese version instead of just cutting them out to appeal to the West. It's also impressive that there's a physical referee and ring announcer. Many PS1 wrestling games didn't have a physical ring announcer or referee present, and many also didn't have ring introductions at all. Power Move Pro Wrestling quietly commits to the illusion of wrestling by having a visible referee and ring announcer, and that goes a long way. It helps even a goofy game like Power Move feel like actual wrestling. Verisimilitude is the word of the day here. But enough fancy words and gushing about window dressing. Let's wrap it up. Power Move Pro Wrestling is largely forgotten by most. It didn't sell tons of copies. It didn't have a fancy license to coast on like the WWF or WCW. It was overshadowed by basically every other wrestling game in the West. But before anyone else made a 3D wrestling game on the PlayStation, Yuke's was already there with Power Move Pro Wrestling. Hell, the original Japanese version was the very first PS1 wrestling game, period. The gameplay was fun, accessible, and functional. The presentation, even filtered through localization, oozes Japanese wrestling credibility and feel, and it set a rock-solid foundation for the future wrestling games on PlayStation. Nobody in the West had really tried to go 3D or even really tried to recreate proper wrestling on the PS1. Even in Japan, the original version of this game beat the legendary Fire Pro Wrestling series to 3D by several months. But the less we say about Iron Slam 96, the better. It's interesting that in late 1996, right when the NWO storyline was making American wrestling cool again, it was up to the Japanese developer Yuke to break new ground in video games and show the West how it's done. Everything Yuke would do in the future, like SmackDown, Wrestle Kingdom, and SmackDown vs. Raw, all started here. Their whole philosophy of accessible, snappy, frantic gameplay was born right here. Power Move is simple and a little shallow. It's not a masterpiece. But it shows restraint, cares about actually feeling like wrestling, and confidently nails 3D in a genre that was staggering blindly towards the third dimension. Power Move Pro Wrestling is obscure, but it's one of the most important wrestling games ever made. If you have any thoughts on Power Move Pro Wrestling, I'd love to talk about it in the comments down below. Thanks for watching.